Unlocking the Soul, hosted by Rob Simperman and produced by Simplify Films. Episodes cover mature and controversial themes, including death, murder, and suicide. Consider this when deciding whether and when to watch.
23. Alternative Soul Paths. After an appropriate number of lives and progress on our path, we no longer feel the pull to incarnate. We have learned our lessons, experienced our emotions, tested our conscience, and are ready to move on. Again, we do not simply enter an eternal rest. We crave to ascend, to make ourselves in God's image. We probably have infinite paths that we can't even comprehend, but we do know about a variety of options. We can, of course, become a guide for a cohort of less advanced souls, such as by apprenticing under a primary spirit guide. We can have a role cleaning up the environment and helping nature. I'm sure this is an in-demand role right now as Earth tries to avoid environmental catastrophe. Are you interested in artistic expression? Become an artist using space and time as your medium. If you can't wrap your head around that, well, the Christ narrative in its several forms is one such example given of a time-space artwork crafted for our world's spiritual advancement, as we'll discuss in detail shortly. Another option is exploring the system of probabilities of reality beyond the limits of Earth's physics. This is like an entirely different curriculum from normal incarnations. Instead of following a single branch moving through a life that we've been talking about so far, you would instead explore the infinite variations of one life. Our oversoul can explore all possible realities simultaneously or skip around to conduct a set of lessons. For example, Seth describes that if you were to decide to give a stranger $1, there's also a version of reality where you don't, and another one where you give him $1,000, and another when you shoot him in the head, and everything in between. I find this path fascinating from a science fiction perspective. I think about it like Dr. Strange's multiverses. But how do we in the spirit world fit into the bigger picture? And how high does it all go? 24. A hierarchy of frequencies. When I look at you, I see a multidimensional form in motion, a geometric collection of highly intensified energy with a nucleus that is your whole self. The self that you know is only a small portion of that self boxed in, so to speak, by its limited perception. Jane Roberts and Seth. So yes, we are energy. As such, we vibrate with a frequency. We exist on one of several different planes, which are like groupings of different frequencies that can coexist without interfering, like how the channels on a radio coexist, ready for you to tune into them. This is a topic with as many interpretations as there are spiritualists, but let's see if we can present a framework that generally aligns with the descriptions from our key sources. First, consider the level of a soul along its own advancement path. This is often referred to as ranging from new souls to old souls. Dr. Newton enumerated the levels that current humans belong to along this metric. He determined that, based on his cases, almost 3/4 of all souls who inhabit human bodies on Earth today are still in the early stages of development. On his scale, he defines these young souls as level 1 and 2. The higher numbers describe souls closer to the end of their incarnation cycle on Earth. On his scale, Dr. Newton found the level breakdown as follows. Level 1, 42%. Level 2, 31%. Level 3, 17%. Level 4, 9%. And level 5, only 1%. But it is rare for a level 5, usually a guide incarnating for a specific role, to seek a regression therapist, so these numbers may be skewed from the actual distribution. The most advanced souls are more likely off selflessly working to advance human values and other significant impacts. Think of Mother Teresa or the Dalai Lama as recent examples. Now, the scale of soul maturity is different from the frequency planes of the entire spirit world, in which we humans are perceiving one narrow band right now. Describing the entire spectrum of energetic beings requires a look at densities. First, understand we're not talking about physical or mathematical dimensions, like the progression from a point to a line, to a square, to a cube. That's a common confusion, because we humans just happen to live in a third-dimensional space while being third-density beings, but that's just a coincidence. Instead, think about how fast particles and energy waves vibrate. Let's use a scale of 7 densities, though there are other scales some prefer. That's because these aren't distinct levels with a clear border, but rather useful breaks along a frequency gradient. more like an analog FM radio than a digital radio. Or think of it like driving on the freeway. All the 70-mile-an-hour cars can see each other clearly out their windows, even make eye contact between lanes. But a pedestrian on the side of the road can only catch a glimpse that blurs by. Canon subjects help us understand these densities and planes clearly. What should not be surprising by now is that beings ascend to the next level by raising their vibrational frequency and leveling up your Mario video game character I mentioned earlier. But let's start at the bottom. While below us humans, subatomic particles are the first density. The second density includes the so-called elementals. These are collective energy beings ranging from inanimate objects like rocks to plants to wild animals, with domestic animals being a bit higher due to our love and attention raising their vibrations. We also have a plane above that with nature's helpers or protector beings. We might know some of these as tree dryads and nymphs, river naiads, elves, fairies, as well as impish creatures like leprechauns. We're told that most of us humans started out in these lower levels as nascent souls before being ready to incarnate as human. Humans, as third density, have the seeds of self-awareness and free will. This starts at a sort of subhuman plane of people without full soul energy. They may include a psychopath without a developed conscience, or the so-called background people who are the extras in the dramas of our lives, but not on their own soul journeys. They're the non-player characters of our video game. But third density also includes the normal human plane we are all most familiar with. Next, fourth density beings, that's like a bridge between the physical and the ethereal planes. This density can be thought of like a buffer for the spirit world, as a being here can project into our density fairly easily. Note there are positive and negative beings here. This includes souls obsessed with earthly carnal addictions, like the hungry ghost concept of Buddhist lore, or our own guides popping into our plane to give us a subtle pep talk. Fifth density beings are completely ethereal. They are focused on evolving towards perfection and accumulating wisdom. This includes the spirit world plane with all the interlife activities we've been talking about thus far, including the greetings, life reviews, meetings with the guides, and planning sessions. This fifth density also includes the somewhat higher planes where our guides normally reside and the primary learning planes we may visit between lives. Sixth density beings have finished their personal incarnation cycles and now tend toward group souls. This density includes the elders and other ascended beings. This is where Seth would reside, and as he describes it, his current environment is not the one in which we would find ourselves immediately after death. He says we would need to die many more times to be able to enter his particular frequential plane. Ascended beings only incarnate in exceptional cases to assist us. This sixth density also includes angels who are on a path without incarnations. Canon subjects compare angels to the people manning the water stations along a marathon. So their service is just as critical to those running the race, they just have different definitions of success than us runners. There are several higher or upper astral planes in the sixth density, but we have limited visibility here. Our hypnosis sources and mediums did get hints of the spiritual governing structure, though. Each universe, yes, universe, has its own central council, with tiers of council below that, down to the planetary level. Presumably, our council of elders is part of this structure. There's also a very high plane where the Christ consciousness energy comes from. We'll get into that shortly in more detail. And what we've been waiting for, the seventh density. This is the unity with all that is. This would be what we know as God, and if you're having a hard time getting a picture of an old bearded man out of your mind, Canon subjects remind us that our limited impressions of God came from the early church, presenting him as simply as possible for the audience of the time. Much of that personification with patriarch imagery still persists in our culture today. Instead, think of all that is as the creative force behind an unimaginable number of universes, while also being the structure of all of it itself. Edgar Cayce put it simply, God is actually the consciousness and the frequency of creation. Dr. Newton says, people in hypnosis say that they feel the presence of a supreme power directing the spirit world, but they are uncomfortable using the word God to describe a creator. Every soul has a spiritual higher power linked to its existence. This intelligent energy is universal in scope, and so we all share divine status. Even our guides are pretty clueless about this plane, but all seem to agree that whatever you are picturing now is woefully inadequate. As one soul says, we are pieces of God to whom He has given personification and personalization for a purpose of growth towards perfection. So anything we view as imperfections are not so when viewed from the God plane. That's merely a limitation of our perception. Like a single cell in our body failing, while our overall body is healthy, happy, and appreciates the contribution of all of its cells. So you may now be wondering whether, with all that structure above and below, are we truly free to act?